Dallas Theological Seminary's Chapel Podcast.
For those of you especially who have not heard our speaker, let me introduce him to you and those who are listening from around the world. Our speaker today is Dr. Tim Kimmel, who's the Executive Director of Family Matters. He earned his THM from DTS in 1976 and then moved to Phoenix, where he ultimately founded Family Matters in 1982. He earned his doctorate from Western Seminary from Portland, Oregon in 1995, and he's one of America's top advocates for the family today. The goal of Family Matters is to equip families for every age and every stage of life. He and Family Matters conduct the Raising Truly Great Kids conferences across the country to address those unique pressures that confront members of today's families. He's been a speaker for the Promise Keepers, Focus on the Family, Family Life's On the Edge Tour, the conferences for Family Life Ministry, Weekend to Remembers, along with his wife, Darcy. In addition to speaking, he's authored several books, including Grace-Based Parenting, Little House on the Freeway, and Surviving Life in the Fast Lane. He's hosted his own nationally syndicated radio program, Tim Kimmel Live, that tackles cutting-edge topics, especially addressing family issues. Tim and Darcy have 4 children, 3 of which are married, and they are the proud grandparents of 3. Darcy is here with him this morning. As Tim comes, would you give them a great DTS welcome? Tim, we love you and thank you for being here.
Thank you, man. Almost 40 years ago, Darcy and I got married in Annapolis, Maryland. Packed up our Pontiac GTO in 1966. It was a dark green metal flake with a big 389. And we went on our honeymoon to Dallas Theological Seminary. 1 week later, we were here in orientation, and then it started from there. Fond memories are always here when a speaker comes back to talk, but I want to at least give you a reference point. Darcy and I have been married almost 4 years. Darcy, stand up, let them say hi to you. There's an old saying that says you're either doubled or halved on your wedding day. I was quadrupled. Now, the rumor at the reception was that Darcy was bottom fishing, but I said, look, work with me. I have potential. I'm a party waiting to take place, and we've had 4 kids and then now grandkids. You know, grandkids are God's reward for you not selling your children. And we are so grateful to have this wonderful chance to affect another generation. I did find out a secret. I've always wondered, why do grandparents and grandchildren get along so well? In fact, they get along better than the children get along with their actual parents. Have you noticed that? Well, we finally figured out the reason grandparents and grandchildren get along so well with each other is they both share a common source of annoyance. And so we are grateful to be co-conspiring with these little kids to kind of make sure that their parents stay honest. Well, I want to talk to you. When you're invited to come back to your alma mater and speak, listen, who's kidding who? You think, man alive, get out your best airbrushed homily. You're being watched, maybe even stalked by the people that surround you. And but I'm not going to do that. I have some of those, but I don't think they would impress you anyway. I did not come here to wow you. Instead, I came here to woo you. I didn't come here with a message. I come here with a burden. Because I sat where you sat, and I have been now out there serving, just like you are going to be taking off to do that too. But I have found that so much of the good stuff that was put in me gets overwhelmed by the white noise within our evangelical movement and gets us off course, especially when it comes to doing significant ministry and in having families that make a difference. Jesus knew all about this. There's nothing new about it. He contended with the ongoing battle of people trying to complicate what he was trying to not make simple, but make real and authentic in our lives. In Matthew chapter 12, Jesus is having to contend with the Pharisees again and again and again. And this time it's just the Sabbath day, and they're just slipping through the grain fields. And the guys are getting something to eat. They're kind of picking some grain on their way through. But the nitpickers of theology were watching, and they got all upset that these guys were breaking the Sabbath. Basically, they're saying, Jesus, you're disobedient. You're a disobedient rabbi. And so are these guys following you around. Because he wasn't walking according to the arbitrary layered upon layered upon layered protocol for what is acceptable if you are an obedient follower of Jehovah God. In Matthew 12:7, the punchline of this whole dialogue with them, he says, if you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. There's nothing new about this problem. It goes all the way back there, but we still contend as we go out in ministry, we are going to be faced with a group of people, a group of evangelicals that want to quantify and break down our belief system into something that's real easy to pick up on the cadence of and walk with. And since we're all preparing for ministry, we also have our own inclination towards it. I'm going to flip my cards over. I was brought up in a very legalistic church. And if I had my way, I'd change the name of our church gatherings to LA meetings. We're just a bunch of legalists anonymous. And we go up and say, hi, I'm Tim, and I'm a legalist, and you all say, hi, Tim. And we all talk about this battle that we always have of slipping back into performance. And you're going to be going out, you're preparing for it. And one of the fundamental, foundational things that you're learning here at this school is about God's grace. Everything pivots on His grace. I'm not diminishing any of the other wonderful attributes and assets of the God that we love, but the uniqueness of our God is He is a God of grace. But my observance over the past 40 years is that when it comes, we evangelicals are really big on grace when it comes to salvation, and we'll offer grace when it comes to salvation. Then we just give grief afterwards. Now, many times we do this unwittingly. We don't realize we've fallen into that trap that's set out there for any of us. Evangelicals, my observations, we clearly get grace when we're talking about saving grace. I once was lost, now I'm found. I was blind, now I see. But then we have a bad habit of slipping back into wanting to distill this thing down into a checklist. And yet you go over to Galatians. Here's a whole book that Paul set aside to deal with this very issue. And he's in familiar passages. In Galatians 2:20, we've memorized this. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. In the life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. But we usually stop there. He says, I do not set aside the grace of God. For if righteousness could be gained through keeping the rules or through the law, Christ died for nothing. Well, in anticipation of being here, I would just think, what is the thing I most want to share with you here? And I had one of those kind of little times where my brain was kind of running real fast. And so I created something. I wrote something out, and I realized that if I share this around these type of people that are on either side of me, this could be the end of it all for me. But if I die, I die. I want to share with you what I call the grace list. Because as I was looking at this whole dilemma that we struggle with, I was trying to figure out, put in as simple terms as possible, why is it we get off course in our walk with God and in our ministry. And I think it's because so many people go through their evangelical lives doing what I call the obedience-based life. The obedience-based life. And I want to suggest to you that all along God meant for us to live a grace-based life. And I just want to contrast these two, if you will. And by the way, professors, I've gone through and I've annotated all the scripture on either side of these things in my own notes at home. So I hope I can stand up to you guys here. But here's the thing. I think the obedient-based life, you live to please God. That's your whole focus. I want to please God. The grace-based life, you live to trust God. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, it says. And so instead of us trusting Him, we're into pleasing Him. The obedience-based life is a performance. The grace-based life is a relationship. The obedience-based life is a march with a left-right cadence, and we want to be able to pick up that cadence. We want to know what's next. Whereas the grace-based life is a dance, and you don't have any control over the music. You're just supposed to pick up the rhythm. And when you walk with God, and He is your life, He knows that rhythm that He can help you with. The obedience-based life comes off more as a duty, whereas the grace-based life is a delight. The obedience-based life is predictable. The grace-based life is fluid. The obedience-based life promotes fear, because I'm never quite sure of myself, am I? Whereas the grace-based life promotes faith, because you can't believe that you'd even get a chance to have a heart connection to the God of the universe, the God who created you. The obedience-based life creates worry, whereas the grace-based life creates calm, because you have confidence in the God who's overseeing your life. The obedience-based life is very masked. You're very careful about how many people you let in close to you, because they're going to see you for what you really are and realize you don't measure up. Whereas the grace-based life is transparent. You say, who's kidding who? I know exactly what kind of a train wreck I'd be without Jesus in my life. The obedience-based life leads to a critical spirit. The grace-based life, a compassionate spirit. You see others, you see yourself in the others, and you see the problems they're dealing with, the same ones you did, and you want to see them set free from it the way Christ set you free from it. The obedience-based life, you sense a lot of guilt, because you just never measure up, whereas the grace-based life, you sense a lot of freedom. The obedience-based life leads to pride. The grace-based life is all about humility. That's the starting point. In fact, God says, He says, I give grace to the humble, but I stand against the proud. In fact, that's the one verse in the Bible where I say, if I want to get more, if I want to understand God's grace, just be more humble and watch what happens. The grace-based life is the obedience-based life is very exclusive, because you just want to hang around with the people of like mind. You're threatened by people outside of the checklist type mindset, whereas the grace-based life is very enfolding, and it's much more reaching out to others. The obedience-based life is an outside-in management. The grace-based life is an inside-out surrender. The obedience-based life is for church people. And that's why a lot of people seeking Christ don't want to come to our churches, because we made them comfortable little evangelical country clubs where they're safe. Whereas the grace-based life is for everybody. The obedience-based life is more natural, and that's why we turn to it. It's the default mode. It's predictable. Whereas the grace-based life is supernatural. You cannot live in the grace-based life without staying connected to the heart of God and walking by faith. Obedience-based life focuses on being good. The grace-based life focuses on being connected to the heart of God. The obedience-based life lends itself to self-righteousness. But guess what? The grace-based life lends itself to organic obedience. Because obedience is clearly part of the whole equation. We want to obey God. We're called to obey God. It's clear. But there's two ways to go about this. Well, with that in mind, how does this How does this affect our relationships at home? Because this is where it's got to play out, under the stresses of our closest relationships. Well, it plays out in every way there. If I assume that I'm on a performance basis with God, that if I do certain things, He's going to love me more, and if I don't do certain things, He's going to love me less, which isn't in this book. If I assume that, then guess what? I'm going to put my spouse on a performance basis. And I'm going to put my kids on one. Then if I'm still trying to present the gospel to my kids, I'm giving a conflicting message to them. And it's no wonder many kids, even brought up in some of the most serious Christian homes, can lose their way because we have muddied the waters. Well, Darcy and I became parents, and we did like most young parents do. We started reading the books out there, the Christian books, to get some help. And at the time, there was a couple of really good ones. But for the most part, we found that the bulk of them were mainly about discipline. You know, how to stand in your kid's air hose without losing your mind over the process. And we saw behind them what I like to call a lot of fear-based parenting, a lot of fear-based writers, and they're just afraid of the world and Hollywood and hip-hop music and cohabitating neighbors in public schools, and on they go, and the usual suspects in Facebook, and so you want to raise these kids like, you know, kind of the Amish on I don't know, crack or something, you know, just tight end, and then I saw a lot of sin management in these books. A lot of evangelical behavioral modification. And then so I think because of that, that's why a lot of Christian parents just outsource and subcontract all the heavy spiritual lifting to the professionals at the church or at their Christian schools. There's got to be a better way. And Darcy and I felt like there had to be. God would not leave parents with so much influence over a person's life. I think the singular most influential person on anybody is our parents. And not give us a plan right there in the Bible to follow. And yet, when you think about it, we don't really distill family down to a theology much, do we? We have all kinds of theologies, but when it comes to theology of family, we don't articulate or use those terminologies about it. But Darcy and I were certain he had to have left the plan. And so that's why we started praying like mad, and we just knew God would do that. And you know, it's interesting. If you have an aha moment and you ask the Bible the right question, you're amazed what's right in front of you. And we had one of those aha moments that, you know, should have gone without saying. We thought, wait a minute. You're a father. You're a parent. You're parenting a family. I wonder if we can take what you're doing to your family and put it in terms and handles that we could use as parents in raising our own kids. And that's where the grace-based strategy came from. And I can summarize grace-based parenting in one sentence. It's simply treating your kids the way God treats His kids. And He's dealing with us through the power of His grace, and it's all about relationship. Now, up here on the platform, you'll see a house model. And this house model actually represents the theology of grace-based families. And you'll find that if you take how God deals with us, you can break it down into 4 levels. And the first level there, you know, there's 3 driving core needs that he dials in with us, and He's constantly meeting through His grace. There's 4 freedoms He offers us through His grace. There's 6 character traits that we could easily see in the Bible that He can build into us to give us infrastructure. And there's 4 qualities that are represented by the roof. I don't have time to go into that, but we're having a brown bag theology immediately following this, and I'm going to unpack that in depth for anybody that wants to come. But I would like to just zero in on that second level, or that blue level, just to give you some real practical handles on how you can take God's grace and make it give you some real help in raising your kids and treating your spouse and treating the people closest to you. And right, by the way, this is really something when we take a grace-based strategy for our family and make it also the same grace-based strategy for how we treat each other within the family of God. First thing I see about grace-based families is they give their children the freedom to be different. Fear-based families do not have room for that. Sin management parents, no way. Legalistic parents, no way. But when I say different, let me give you some synonyms so you know what I'm talking about, like weird, bizarre, strange, goofy, quirky. Grace-based families have room for that. Because they realize, I mean, God hasn't painted 2 sunsets the same yet. He hasn't striped 2 zebras the same yet. He hasn't fingerprinted 2 people the same yet. He's this God of variety, and he expresses that in the way he makes in his creativity in people. But many times we don't grant that to our children because their differences annoy us or embarrass us. And so we say, stop that. Why? Well, you're annoying me. Your son's out there doing headbutts into trees. Stop that. What's wrong with you? Your little daughter gets her Barbies and she's playing The View and they're arguing, and just stop that. And then your son comes in, grabs a Barbie, bites the head off, throws it like a grenade. Please, you're driving me nuts. Well, they're just kids. They're just kids behaving like children. And then they'll do something wild and crazy that we think is absolutely way off our acceptable list, like do something crazy with their hair. And then we'll say something like, I don't think Jesus would be very pleased with your hair. And we just start layering on all the legalism and all that stuff, and we just drive these wedges between their hearts and us and their hearts and God. I saw this up close. Our youngest son, Colt, had asked if he could grow his hair real long. He said, sure, go for it. He was in junior high. Go for it. You got to grow it a long time to be where I was when I was your age in junior high. And then I was speaking down in Miami, and I was coming, and a taxi coming back to the airport, and he called me. It was on a Sunday. He said, Dad, it's spring break. I was wondering, can I have a mohawk? Can I have a mohawk? And I thought, yeah. That'd be fun. Sure, you can have a mohawk. I'll be home tonight at 7 o'clock. I'll cut you a great mohawk. And then we'll buzz it off on Saturday because the school doesn't allow mohawks. So we'll just buzz it on Saturday. He said, great. So he hung up the phone. He said to our daughter Shiloh was listening. Said, what did Dad say? He said, yeah, he can do it. He's going to cut it when he gets home at 7 o'clock. He says, I know how to cut one of those. Now, I was factoring in something. I was factoring in church. Because our kids go to church on Sunday evenings. It's where all the youth things are. It's a big, large metropolitan church in Scottsdale. I was factoring, church will be over. I'm cutting it off next Saturday. Everything's fine. She cut him a mohawk. They took Elmer's glue and glued it up. And they went to church. Now, I'm sure some people had to step up their meds when they saw our son Colt. And there were whispers, and that's the son of the guy who writes the books about parenting. Anyway. But I want to tell you something. There was one man that saw Colt in between the two services and saw him across campus and yelled at Colt Kimmel, is that you? Get over, I got to see this. And he went on and on. It was our senior pastor, Daryl. He said, that's the most magnificent I have never seen. That is the greatest moment. How do you get to stay up like that? Glue. He said, I wish I had a camera. I would love to have a picture of you and me with that mohawk for my study. Because you need to know something. We raised our kids in a grace-based church. And that's the only kind of church we wanted to take our kids to. We wanted to go to a church where the people that were running the thing knew what matters and what doesn't matter. Man looks on the outside. God looks on the heart. We got to give our kids the freedom to be different. As Chuck Swindoll did that great work on Proverbs 22:6, raise up a child according to his unique inner bent. Well, some of that stuff, you see, frightens you to death. Let me give you another one. Besides giving them the freedom to be different, we need to give them the freedom to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable. What I mean by this is kids shouldn't have to wear masks around us. Their fears and their inadequacy should be able to come out to the surface without the dread of humiliation or being marginalized. I was going into the 9th grade, a big high school in Annapolis, a big 5A school, and I was very excited because I was going to play football for their famous coach, and the girls were prettier and the rock and roll was louder. There was more of both. I thought, this is going to be great. But that in between my 8th and 9th year, that summer, several hundred of us got letters in the mail from the Board of Education saying that because of overcrowded conditions, we were being annexed to an elementary school in downtown Annapolis. So instead of going to the big high school, we're back in elementary school. Many trade-offs. The biggest one was in the area of phys ed. Because normally you would go and put on a phys ed outfit, go out and play hard. It's a very humid climate. You take a shower, put on your school clothes. We didn't have that option. We had to wear our school clothes. Well, I went into there was a gymnasium on the 2nd floor of a county building about a block away from the school. I went in there one winter morning for phys ed, and they had a trampoline opened up. And I got very excited because I'd never jumped on one before. The coach came out, we gathered around, he looked at all of us, he came back to me and says, Kimmel, take off your shoes, leave on your socks, climb up here, and follow my instructions. So I proceeded to do that, but as I did, I realized that I had holes in both of my socks. Not one, both. And one of my friends thought everybody should make this observation. Oh, look at Tim, isn't this sad? We need to take up a collection, buy Tim some real socks. Now, were someone to have a problem with how I dress today, I could care less at my age. I don't care. But when you're in that corridor of time, that 13, 14, 15, that's the time when kids are unusually self-conscious. And this became a real embarrassing moment for me. And I got up there and I was doing exactly what he told me to do. But all I'm thinking about, I'm going to go home and I'm going to get out my sock drawer. I'm going to darn all my socks. I will never let this happen to me again. The other guys jumped. When the class was over, the coach dismisses. He takes off. I went and got my books, got my shoes on, and I was going out the side door, and I got almost down the bottom of the steps. I hear my name, Kimmel. Wait up. It was the coach. He came down, he pulled me aside, he said, hey, Tim, I wanted to tell you why I called on you to do the demonstration. He says, you're the most agile student in my class. And then he pulled off his tennis shoe, and he held up his foot, and he had a big old hole in his sock. He says, you know, us agile guys are tough on socks. Now go to class. So I'm proceeding over to class, and the whole way I'm thinking, what's agile? Because I'd never heard the word before. I mean, I was a pathetic student. I didn't know. But they had a dictionary, and they loved when you actually looked up a word without a gun held to your head. And I went over there. Now, I'm glad I didn't find Argyle. Would that have been confusing? But I read, and I found agile, and I read for the first time in my life that I could move with speed, ease, elegance, and liveliness. I learned for the first time in my life that I was mentally alert and quick-witted. No one had ever told me that before. I wrote it down, and then I memorized it. And I did a 180-degree turn in two major areas of my life, academics and athletics. In fact, a couple weeks later, they had a contest, who can do the most sit-ups in the 9th grade. And they weren't those little crunch things. You can do millions of those. These are these old arthritic things that are outlawed now. To lay flat. Some of you guys remember, you come all the way up and cross over. And I set the record that year, 560 of those. I sat up through phys ed, through English class, and through lunch. My stomach muscles hurt for days after that, but I didn't care because I was agile. You know, it took me a while to put all the pieces together to figure out why the coach disappeared so quickly after class. He had to get to his office, get that shoe off, get the scissors out, cut that hole, and catch up with me. Listen, our children have these vulnerable moments all the time. And they don't need us trivializing or marginalizing these things. I think it's because so much that's happens why people end up growing up thinking with their emotions, because they never learned how to process them right. We know that God puts inadequacies in people's lives, and he's not going to take them away. 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul had these things that he wanted God to take away. He said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is perfected in your weakness. Let me give you another one, another freedom that grace does. Grace gives the people they love the freedom to be candid. In other words, to tell you what's on their mind. They might be, what if you have kids that are doubting? They say, I don't believe that Jesus is God. I don't believe that God, the Bible is the truth, that Jesus is the only way. This is no time to panic. Hire one of the theologians here and duct tape him to your kid's head until he screams for uncle. You don't need that. Smarter kids than yours and mine have doubted their faith, and God can bring them right through. And yet, that's one area they need to be able to tell us. But sometimes they need to be able to talk to us when we frustrated them and ticked them off, because we do that, don't we? We're not perfect parents. We make mistakes. Cody, you just saw him here. I have his permission to tell you the story. He was in his junior year of high school, spring, and he said, he came to me on a Tuesday night and said, Dad, I need you to sign me out of school tomorrow at noon. Really? Why would I do that? Well, because it's opening day of the Diamondbacks, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and his friend Steven has tickets right behind the dugout, and he invited Cody to go. Well, the Diamondbacks had beaten the New York Yankees the year before in the World Series. This is a big opening day, but for some dumb reason, I thought I needed to weigh in about personal responsibility. I said, but Cody, you're a student. Students go to class and so forth. They get off at 3. But Dad, they're going to have F-16s fly over. But that's very nice, son. But you got to do your homework. You go to school. He says, I think Randy Johnson's on the mound. Once again, though, it's about, we have jobs, son. And I'm going on and on. He said, I think Alice Cooper's singing the national anthem. And I was just frustrating this boy. And he got very quiet. He said, listen, Dad, I bring you home straight A's. all I've ever brought you home are straight A's. I can't bring you home any better grades than I'm bringing you. Now, you need to decide whether I can go to that game or not. It was like God reached down and did one of these right on the top of my head. I said, what a bone. I reached in my pocket and I took out 2 20s and I handed it to him and said, make sure you buy the big hot dogs and the big drinks for you and Stephen. And please forgive me for being such an idiot. Listen, that can happen to any of us. We all make mistakes. We all get it wrong. But when we are quick to forget, and they have an outlet to be able to safely come to us, and it's come before the throne of grace, as it talks about in Hebrews, boldly to talk with us about the things that are hurting their heart. Well, I wish I could finish this out. There's one more here, and that's the freedom to make mistakes. Now, I don't mean by that there aren't consequences. Discipline and correction are part of grace. But grace-based families realize that kids are going to make mistakes. We're all going to make, and it's a great place to work through this stuff. But if disappointments are part of life, then they shouldn't define our commitment to each other. Moral setbacks are properly processed, and a child's sinful actions never mean the end of our relationship with them. Well, listen, I want you to know that God can use us in so many incredible ways in embedding a heart of grace in Him when we let His heart of grace shine in us. And the chance to do this with your kids, that window closes faster than ever before. I tell you what, I've married off 3 kids now, and they're slipping through fast, and our youngest one's in college. When it comes to parenting, the days seem long, but the years are really short. So seize that day with God's grace.